Hello, everybody. New patch just dropped, 2.0.2. There's been some balance patches, and I just wanted to give my version of what a tier list could be in this game. In Omega Strikers, pretty much everyone is viable at a high level. Everyone's unique enough and has their own strategies that they can be played pretty well. However, there is some specific strikers that are just better. Now, I want to start with goalies because I feel like that's a fair way to do it. Goalies, even with the nerf, Atlas is probably S tier. You don't see him played a whole lot. I feel like people might see him as a more boring pick to play because his kit is somewhat simple, but also really difficult to use optimally. Like, he's a very high skill ceiling character. However, he can play very just like basic, put the circle in the goal and the ball doesn't get the score, doesn't get through. He's very good as a goalie. He does good with what he does. And even the little nerf that got to him, it doesn't really affect most players. Only the highest end players it will really bother, but this isn't going to be so much of a high end tier list because that gets real funky with like 3 stacks and strategies and stuff. This is just an overall character alone tier list, and Atlas is probably on the top. Now, Asher, I want to say, is probably maybe B tier as a goalie. She is good as a goalie, but not as good as she used to be. And she's good as a striker, but not as good as she used to be. There was a time when she was just stupid OP. But she's not that anymore. She's a pretty well-balanced character, I'd say. She gets banned a lot still because she is annoying to go up against. Her shield, if you're not paying attention, when she throws that out, if you run into it a lot, you will just die. And she's just got a lot of kind of gimmicky ways to push the core up and kind of mess with you and interrupt you and get in your way. So she's really good. I'd say above average. If, like, let's say C was probably average, she's above average. A is great. S is OP as hell. So then, like, next, going to Juliet. Don't play Juliet goalie. She has nothing as a goalie. You really can't play Juliet goalie. Just don't. Estelle goalie, I want to say, is probably overall B tier. If you know what you're doing, you could easily go to A tier. If you don't know what you're doing, you could go to C or even D tier with Estelle goalie. But I think overall, Estelle is a pretty good goalie. She's got lots of range. She can keep the core pretty much past midfield at all times. She's got a lot of easy ways to push up into midfield to try to kind of assist the forward push with your forwards. She's got a lot going for her. She just doesn't have a whole lot of defensive power if you start getting stuffed. So it is kind of up to you and your teammates to keep the core out of your goal zone, because you can get really messed up if she gets kind of stuffed in there. But otherwise, she is a very solid goalie choice. Rune, I think, is probably an S tier goalie as well. Similar to Atlas in how his skills can work for S tier. Not only does he have a bread and butter kill combo that he can do from goal, but his abilities give him a lot of different things he can do as goalie. He can slow the core, and he can set up a bouncy circle that it hits off of, right? The slowing the core ability is not as good unless your teammates or you can really follow up on it and get the enemy team away from the core before it spawns again, or else you're just in a really bad spot overall. I think Zentaro, similar to Juliet, don't play as goalie. His kit is entirely made for essentially killing enemy strikers, knocking them out of the arena and stuff. So just don't play him as goalie. Aimee, I want to say, can be played as goalie to some degree of success, but it's iffy. A lot of her kit is made for striking at the core and being more of a forward. Her only real defensive option for the most part is her ult. Everything else is kind of more of an attacking option. So I like she's a all right goalie pick, but she's not going to be amazing by any means. Another F tier X. Don't play the brawlers essentially as goalie because they want to brawl, they don't want to defend. It's essentially as simple as that. Dude cannot function if he's a goalie. None of his abilities matter, you know. So it's like you're playing a stock character at that point. So it's very bad. I want to say Luna can go to A tier. I would say before the new Omega Strikers global like full release thing, like in the beta, she was really good. Put eject button on her and she'd constantly just be able to use eject button and be really prevalent throughout the game. Things have changed a little bit, and while you still can do that, she can no longer be played as a forward, and she is a little more awkward to play as goalie than she used to be, especially with now how different goals have, or different stages have different kind of play styles where you have to hit certain things certain ways to get the goal open. I feel like she's not quite as prevalent as goalie as Atlas or Rune is, but she's still a very good contender for a higher pick on the list. Going to Juno, I think Juno is also A tier. Juno has a lot of power right now with all of her slimes. It's not particularly hard to deal with the slimes if you're a goalie and they're a forward, but if they're a goalie, it gives a lot of disruption to your enemy's push. It gives your forwards a lot of time to kind of work their way back and try to help defend should they need to. It gives you a lot of options to defend. It gives you literal just instant opportunities to push the core back past midfield towards your opponent's goal and keep the pressure on. And it really messes with the opposing team's push. So she's definitely A tier, I think. She's very good at playing defense. Rasmus, I think, is probably C tier along with Aimee. His kit's not really built for it. I don't think he should be played really as a goalie. However, I can see some use cases. If you're really good at Rasmus, you could probably use him as a goalie to some degree of success, but it's going to be very difficult and very risky because his ability, one of them literally pulls the core towards you. So unless you're playing like a more forward goalie and can kind of do some fancy stuff with that, he's probably not your best option. Moving to Kai, I think Kai can sit in B tier alongside Estelle and Asher. Kai's really good. Lots of movement speed. He's got some decent like range options and stuff. He's not as amazing as he used to be in the beta, because in the beta he was able to handle goals so well, but now your buffs are kind of a toss-up every game, so you could be a really prevalent goalie or a really mediocre goalie. So I want to err on the side of he's above average. He overall works well if you know how to play him. If you don't, C, D tier. If you do, A tier. And if you get really lucky, you could probably even move up to S tier if you get the right perks for him. Dubu, I think, is kind of a no-brainer S tier. He's got a lot of ways to block off the goal. He's a big boy. He can block things pretty well. He rolls. He does a little wood thing that he sends out to shoot it back. He has tofu. Like, who doesn't love tofu? Dubu's just awesome. He's always been a good goalie. He's never not going to be a good goalie. And I think right now he's probably sitting up around S tier. If you know how to play him, obviously, as with all these guys, they would probably drop a tier if you don't know how to play him. But you can't really go wrong with these three, in my mind. Drekar, I want to say C. You can use him as a goalie, but he's, well, D, actually. You can use him as a goalie, but you're not gaining anything from it. You're losing like half of his kit, and if you play him as goalie, you're playing him as a goalie that plays very forward and invisibly. So you go invisible, your opposing team, when they try to push up with core, they don't know that you're kind of there, ready to defend, and they can shoot at goal, and you're just there. And like there's a surprise factor, but he's not good at goalie. I would not put him as a good goalie. And then Era, I would put in C tier with Rasmus and Imi. I think Era is much better as a forward, more specifically the midfielder forward position, because she's got a lot of team buffs and stuff with her speed and her size manipulation and just good board control. She's not really built to be a goalie, but she can be with her speed boost. She has a little bit of a ranged option in her size control spell thing, and her speed boost is very, very good for quickly getting to the core if you time it right and you know what you're doing, and you're able to get there in time should you need to. But this right here is essentially the current tier list for goalies and Omega Strikers, for me at least, and my knowledge and experience. I figure I should mention this. I did play the beta. I was around gold rank at the time, which was really good for playing at about 20 to 30 FPS on a really crappy old laptop, which for a time, as you can see from my first video I ever made on the game, I had a crashing issue for like the first 2 days that I spent like 18 hours straight, no sleep, trying to solve. So I have some knowledge of the game. And I've got some credit here and there. Let's not look at the fact that I'm stuck in bronze right now. I haven't had a lot of time to play since it came out. I've been really busy, with etc. life stuff, as well as I keep getting teammates who leave. But besides the point, let's go ahead and move over to, I think if we refresh, let's go ahead and move over to Son of a Crap. Let's do that. Y. Reset. There it is. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to forwards. Forwards. Let's just pretty much go in order. Asher, I think, is a tier forward. She's essentially a semi-brawler. She's very good at shoving the core. She's very good at disrupting the enemy team. I think as a more forwards forward, she can perform very well, and as a more midfield forward, she can perform very well. She plays the role very well. I think she's better at it than a goalie at this moment. You see her get banned a lot, and that is for good reason. She's so annoying when she just throws her shield up or something into your goal, and the core is just like guaranteed to just smash stuff in there and get in. It's very, very difficult to play around that, which is why I think she has a respectable A tier. I think Juliet currently can be S tier if you know how to play her very well and you get good ability perks. But because you cannot control that she has like tempo swing and everything like you used to in the beta, I think she's A tier currently. The fact that you cannot control her buffs every time makes her sometimes underperform. I found I pretty much main like Juliet's one of my mains, and she's my main brawler, and I do enjoy her, but I will admit she has her weaknesses sometimes when she doesn't get the correct buffs she wants. As unfortunate as it is, that's just the case, but she's still a very good character, very strong contender for the top of the top here, or the top of almost the top here, and just overall she performs very well. Estelle, I think, is S tier as a forward. If you are good at Estelle, you just win every single time. You just win. I am also an Estelle main to an extent, and Estelle is very, very good at securing goals. Her range is insane. You can play her as a midfielder and still be like the main scorer. You can play her as more of a forward and have a lot of like prevalence in it. And just it's insane what she can do essentially as a forward. And I think she's best suited for midfield forward because her range is insane, but she's just a good forward. Rune, I want to say as a forward, probably B tier. He's useful as a forward, but he plays more controlling as a forward. He's a little awkward to play as a forward overall. He's definitely better suited for goalie, but you can play him as forward, and I think more midfielder, almost as a second goalie, sort of. You play more midfield depending on the map, like the one where you get the speed boost if you pass through the middle bar. Like, that's great for Rune as a midfielder because you can kind of help control the board more that way. I think he's very good there. Atlas, I think probably F tier forward. I don't think he has anything good as a forward. Even as a midfielder forward, he's just play him goalie. I think Zentaro currently is S tier. I think Zentaro's kill power, if you know how to play him, is insane right now. Even without buffs, but with buffs it gets dumber, right? He's very quick, very agile, has very quick kills. He's really good right now. He's hard to play, which probably puts him like an A or a B tier because he's so hard to play, it seems, but he's very good. I can't play him worth a crap, but I've played against players who have absolutely destroyed me. Juliet versus Zentaro just creamed me on Zentaro because Zentaro's very, very strong as a bruiser. He's really good. I think Aimee is probably A tier as a forward. She's a very good midfielder forward, and she's a very good like goal scorer forward. She can kind of do everything a forward wants. She's similar to Era in a sense, but plays slightly less midfieldy and kind of more mid-forward field. Like, you can kind of play wherever you want, the middle of the map onwards with her, and perform super duper well, which is really good, and it's really important. You get a lot of goals scored off of Aimee's abilities. They're all pretty good. X, I want to put in, I want to say anywhere from B to S tier. On one hand, he gets banned all the time. You literally don't get to play him or get to see him be played. And I haven't gotten to see him be played or play him once since the update because he's always getting banned. Because he's always getting banned, that makes me think he's strong enough to warrant an S or an A. But at the same time, compared to how quickly Zentaro and Juliet can get kills and stuff, whereas X is kind of punching you down and bullying you, there are ways around it if your team cares, essentially, or if you just are certain characters. But overall, I would put X in A tier. I think he can be very punishing against the right team comp if they don't have anything kind of as a response to you. And I think that if you're good at playing X, you can really just control the entire game by keeping them basically out of it. But I do not think he's as prevalent as a forward because he's not as good at scoring as he is at just beating people up, which has its purpose, but Zentaro's good at scoring too and has pretty good kill power. Estelle is really good at scoring and has some chip damage here or there. She can get kills, you know. But X just doesn't have that scoring power like the other two do, so that puts him in A tier, I believe. Luna, I think as a forward, is probably D tier. She doesn't get eject button, so a large part of her kit is very risky. And not being able to come back to where you were should you try to push up the core is a problem. I don't think we need to explain that. They're just going to pass you and you're just going to be stuck, right? You're going to be trying to run back. There's nothing you can do. I don't think Luna is a good forward anymore like she used to be. I've seen other people's lists that think that she is still pretty good as a forward, and I just don't agree. I don't think she serves her own kit's purpose as a forward anymore because she does not get eject button. Juno, I want to say, is B tier as a forward. I feel you can kind of get around her gimmicky play style as a better player. If you're playing against complete noobs, Juno will destroy them. But against anyone probably like silver and up or so, when people start to kind of learn how to play the game a little bit, Juno is a good forward, but she's not great. She's easily able to just be shoved to the side for the most part and ignored. But again, if you're good at Juno and you got some good setups and the opposing team isn't respecting you enough and et cetera, Juno can be super OP. But overall, I think Juno is still pretty easy to play around. Therefore, gets a B tier rating for me. Rasmus, I think, is A tier. I think, especially after his new tweaks, he's a little bit better. He can play very uniquely. A lot of players still probably don't know how to play him very well or very optimally, you could say. He actually does kind of go crazy. Especially on certain maps like the, I believe, Imes map, where there's the giant black hole in the middle. If someone's not paying attention, they just die to that, because Rasmus loves to eat people in that black hole. It's insane. So map dependent, a lot of kill power. Pretty good scoring power, although he is complicated to do so with. I think just overall, he's going to be A tier, and as people learn to use him better and better, you could maybe even push up to like a S- tier. Kai, I think, is A tier. I think he's a little underused as a forward, but I believe he's a very good forward. His speed buff's good. His little gun shots are really good for pushing core in to objectives and into goal. And the rest of his moves essentially serve the same purpose. They're just good at scoring or putting pressure on the team that you're going to score. So he does a good job at being like a striking forward. Mid-range forward, you could like, I guess he has speed and some range, but he's not as good as a pick like Era or Ime even. Or like Juno. Rasmus could even do better. Estelle's better at it. So like, I think Kai is just mostly a striking forward. And he's very good at it. He's not the best, but he's very good at it. So I think that we can respect that. Dubu, I think, is B tier. And he can play pretty well as a forward. He does have some power as a forward. If you know what you're doing and it all lines up, he can be super OP, but for the most part, he's more of a disruptive forward who can, similar to Asher, stuff the core into goal and just like walk away and not care, and you're going to score. He can roll onto enemy teams to knock them up and then like shoot the core under them and stuff, and it's like, he's got some fancy gimmicks and stuff, but he's not going to be as consistent as everyone else in the A tier, essentially. He can just get completely shoved to the side, similar to Juno. If his gimmicks aren't working or you're playing against good players, they could even work against you. So you do have to be careful about that. So overall, Dubu is probably a good B tier candidate for a forward currently. Then I think Drekar, probably A tier. Good kill power, good striking power. He's just overall pretty good in any position. He can go invisible. He has his shotgun that he like can kill people out of nowhere. He can score out of nowhere. Like he's pretty good. You have to pay attention to him. You have to respect him. When he goes invisible, you need to be paying attention to where he probably is, or you can get real messed up. And like he's a problem maker. If you play against a good Drekar, you're not ever going to know where the core is going to start going next, because he's just going to be where you shoot it and just attack you again. He's very good. And Drekar meme, it's like one of the biggest memes of the game. Like, come on, you got to respect the meme a little bit. Drekar is awesome. Finally, Era. I think Era is arguably S tier. I think Era is the second best midfielder. If Estelle's the best for scoring midfielder, I think Estelle is the best midfielder for supporting. Estelle's support role plays so well for so many different characters. It is insane. There's literally no drawback to running an Era in your game, and she can play forward pretty well too, like striking forward as well. But I think as a midfielder, she just is unparalleled in the support she brings to her team overall. The speed is awesome. Her ult is awesome. Her attack, her size changing thing is awesome. She plays midfield very, very well. Just like Estelle. Estelle is more oriented on scoring. Era is more oriented on just overall keeping the flow of the game in your favor. And I think that she is very much an S tier character for that. Not at all biased because she's my main and was my original main before trying any other characters. But she's just really, really good. And I think before in the beta, she was probably more A tier. But now that you can't build characters, I feel like she benefits from that because her speed boost is really good out of the box. And characters not getting as strong of boosts as they used to before to their speed and their damage and all this stuff. Being able to give your team speed and give your team damage and reduce the enemy's team's damage and reduce the enemy team's speed is insane. Not being able to highly optimize your characters, but then having a teammate that kind of does it for you is very good. So I think Era is solidly an S tier character for sure. And I think that this is probably the list for forwards. I don't think I need to do an overall list. I feel like that kind of is defeating the purpose of kind of the roles of the game, essentially. I think separating them into roles is the best way to go about it. But I think these two tier lists are pretty accurate. There could be maybe some arguments to be made that maybe Juno is A tier, or maybe like X is a B tier of a forward, or as a goalie, like however needs to be. But I think for the most part, general play throughout most all of ranked, except for the highest of levels, these two lists are pretty accurate. And even in the highest levels, I feel like they're pretty accurate too. You're not doing a whole lot of stuff with these 5 as forwards in the later stages. And A and S rank is subjective for the most part. And same with the goalies, is it's like all the B tiers, like you're not going to be running them a lot as high rankers anyways, because if you're a goalie, you want to play a character that can defend the goal. And you won't be playing any of the F tiers, aka all the bruisers and brawlers and all that good stuff, because they don't defend, they fight. You know, so like I feel like the list is pretty accurate. I'm happy with these lists so far. We'll see what next patch brings. Any big changes? I would like to see a Zentaro change a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, he seems like he gets his abilities a little too quick. Even though I know that his abilities are really long, they feel just strong and fast, and that he gets them back a lot, which maybe damage nerf could be something, or the speed that they come out at could be something that they could look into. But overall, I think the biggest character that could use a nerf is Zentaro, because like, yes, he should be rewarding if you're good at him, but not that rewarding. Holy crap, he's so good. When you know what you're doing with Zentaro, he's nuts. And basically trivializes all the other brawlers, which I think is a problem in and of itself. If one brawler is standing above all the rest of them, there's an issue. Bring him down to A tier viability so that we can move all of the brawlers to S tier and just embrace the fact that it's a brawler meta. It's always gonna be, but not only dominated by Zentaro and Zentaro alone. So yeah, and like the other thing too is these 3 S tiers and forwards could arguably be their own team. Goalie Estelle works just fine. Midfielder Era, Zentaro, scorer. Like this team, just the best forwards could probably be their own team, which is crazy. You can't say that about the goalies, because the goalies is like Atlas and Rune and Dubu. It's like that's not going to be a very balanced team. That's gonna, your striking power is going to suck. You're never going to get scored on, but you will never score. This team seems better. But yeah, I think this is where we're sitting at. For the most part, every character is usable in every role. Just don't use bruisers as goalies. The brawlers, bruisers, whatever, and do not use these two specifically as forwards. They just are not going to perform the way you want them to. And to leave the video off, the biggest tip I can give, just overall, across the board, all gameplay, if you play goalie, do not, and I repeat, do not play with MOBA controls. I'm going to repeat this every single video I make for this game. If you're playing goalie with MOBA controls, you are a cancer upon this world. You need to stop, play WASD so that you can move to the core and then aim and shoot it out of the goal rather than trying to flick your mouse to shoot it out of the goal. You're either going to miss or you're going to shoot it into the goal. I can't stand it anymore. I can't take it anymore. Play WASD. As a forward, you can play MOBA. I don't care. Something I haven't checked yet is if they allowed you to mix the control schemes up and be able to play both. It's something that a lot of the top players recommended alongside myself in the beta. I actually came up with the idea. There's proof that I came up with the idea to be able to merge MOBA and WASD. Not controller and WASD. That was some of the other top players, but I did think about like mouse button MOBA controls could be cool to hit certain angles, kind of optimize your movement, but I haven't tested if that's out yet. I might, or I might not bother with it. I'm not sure, but basically, yeah, don't play MOBA controls if you can help it. As a forward and as a goalie, do not, please, for the love of God. I actually cannot deal with this anymore. Please, 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 please stop playing MOBA controls as goalie. You're going to make me pull my hair out. And I'm growing it out right now. Like, please don't make me do that. Anyways. Thanks for watching the video. Got on a bit of a rant there. But, yeah. Tier list. Woo. Keep on striking.